I'm Hunter Thompson, and welcome to the Cash Flow Connections Real Estate Podcast. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we've got Joe McCall, someone that's been in this industry since 2009, has done a ton of deals virtually, even some land deals, which we'll talk about in a second. He has been in the world of real estate and also on the marketing side of things for a long time and has just crushed it. Joe, it's good to have you back on.
Thank you, man. Good to see you.
What have you been up to? What are you most excited about as we go into 2025 and beyond?
Oh, man. Good question, Hunter. I am excited about the market, and I always am. I'm very optimistic at that from when I'm looking at like macroeconomics and the real estate market for one real good reason. People will always want real estate. They'll always want a house over their head. There'll always be people looking to buy houses, people looking to sell houses. And even when it comes to vacant land, because I've been doing a lot of land lately, there will always be people that are looking to buy more land or sell the land. And there will always be motivated sellers that just don't care about the property anymore and they just want to get rid of it. And because I mainly do wholesaling, I don't actually buy the property until I know I can sell it. And so I never get into a bad deal. I don't buy a deal until I have a buyer to sell it to. So the market, whether it's going up or down or flat, the interest rates doesn't matter at all. I know there are motivated sellers out there, and I'm really good at finding them. And I can do it virtually with a very, very small team from anywhere in the world. And it's just a numbers game. So I send a bunch of offers and I get 1 out of 20 or 30 accepted. And then I turn around and flip it. And that's how we do it. And I've done a lot of deals with my boys, my teenagers. But I'm excited about the market because it doesn't matter what direction it's going. It doesn't matter who's in the office, who's the president. It doesn't matter what interest rates are doing. I don't even care. This is so easy. I think we complicate it too much, Hunter. You just need to go find out where the demand is. Where are people buying the properties? Where are all the fish? And then that's where you go fishing. You go find who are those buyers? What are they buying? And then go get them more of what they want. Somebody told me, this is why I'm excited about the market, because he says it's always easier to sell people what they want rather than what they have, than what you have. So find out what people want. Even when the market was crashing at the worst part of 2006, 7, and 8, there were still people buying property. There were still people putting money back into the market. And so it's really easy to do deals. You just go find who are the people putting the money into the market? What are they buying? What are they looking for? And then I'm going to go find what they want. I'm going to go find what they want and bring it to them. And when you learn that, you can make a lot of money in this market, in this economy. And you'll realize it doesn't matter what direction it's going. Does that make sense?
It does. So I was actually just at a speaking event where the owner of the event, all they do is flip raw land. And this is raw land where there's no roads, there's no sewage, there's just basically, my understanding is just basically nothing. It is literally land. And they're buying deals for like 10K, 20K, and then there's no financing on these deals. So they're usually buying them seller financing and then selling them seller financing. Is that the kind of stuff that you're looking at right now?
Yeah. I'd be curious to know who that was too, by the way. Do I know him?
Her first name is Stacy, and she's located out of Tucson. I don't know her last name, but that's the playbook. And I'm honestly, I'm not really knowledgeable about it. Is it cool if we talk a little bit about the game? Because it's very different than anything I've ever done.
100%. I like to say flip dirt, not houses. And so mainly what we do is we buy houses or we buy vacant lots with cash and sell them with owner financing. I'm really curious to see how Stacy does it. I've done that before with houses. I've never done it with land yet, where you buy land with owner financing and you sell it with owner financing, because then how much of your cash do you use?
Right.
None. And when you typically buy property with owner financing, you can offer the sellers more than you could with a cash offer.
Yeah.
Because with a cash offer, right, I'm going to probably be, when I make my offers for land, I'm at about 40 to 50 cents on the dollar. If the seller is willing to carry the financing and give me good terms, I can give them, if they give me my terms, I can give them their price.
Yep.
So I can give them, if they're willing to do zero down, 0% interest, principal only payments for 10 years,
Well,
I could almost give them any price they want, right?
yeah.
Almost. But
Well,
then
that would be,
I,
I mean, look, let's just think about it like this. If you're trying to buy a property for 50% off and you were willing to pay full price with a 10-year term at no interest, that's essentially looking at time value of money with a discount rate of 15%. That's basically more than 50% off,
yeah.
essentially, from a time value of money standpoint. So
Oh, geez.
that's,
So like, yeah.
yeah,
So I'd be willing to buy the property at, instead of 50 cents on the dollar, I could buy it maybe at 85, 90 cents on the dollar
100%.
with good financing. Now, if they want an interest rate or if they want a down payment or if they don't want 10 years, they want 5 years, then the price goes down.
Yeah.
So it's negotiable. When you make a cash offer, you can only negotiate one thing, and that's the price.
So,
When you make an offer to buy something with owner financing or on creative terms, you can negotiate five or six things, right? You can negotiate price, the down payment, the interest rate, the length of the loan, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, right? When payments start, the interest rate, if I didn't say that already, and how long it goes, balloon period. So you could amortize maybe 30 years, but a balloon in 10 years. So there's many more levers that you can negotiate with sellers. And the great thing about land is the sellers are much more removed from vacant land than they are with houses. With a house, they've lived in there for 30 years, they've put $100,000 into it, or whatever. And there's much more emotional damage with houses. But with land, they just don't care. They haven't been there in 10 years. They're tired of paying the taxes. They just want to get rid of it. They just want the money for something. And so usually I make a cash offer at like 40 cents on the dollar. But if I'm going to buy it with owner financing, I can offer the seller maybe give them, if let's say it's worth 100, I'll give them an offer for 40 grand cash, close in 30 days, and maybe 65 grand if they do owner financing, zero down, principal only payments for 10 years.
cool. If it's cool with you, let's take a
Yeah.
step back because I'm thinking like, how do you find these deals? They're out in the middle of nowhere. How do you know where the market is? Let's start just from the basics. Where are
Yeah.
you finding deals and how are you verifying demand for those kinds of deals?
Well, Zillow is a good place to start.
Okay.
There's another website, landwatch.com, and that shows you where most of the properties are being advertised right now. So you can say, all right, take me to Texas. Show me which counties in Texas have the most properties currently on the market. Now, the Land Watch is a part of the land.com family of websites, but it makes it helpful because when you're looking at landwatch.com, it sorts all of the counties by activity from greatest to least. Well, then what I do is I'll write down the top 20 counties in a certain state where there's a lot of activity. And I just go to Zillow or Redfin and I write down like how many vacant lots have sold in the last 90 days in each of those markets. And it's really easy to find that in Redfin or Zillow. And then on the next column, I do a list for how many active listings are there. And so, there's not a magic formula or science to this, but what you want to avoid is a market where there's no solds, right? So, like, let me rewind a little bit. You've got a list of these 20 counties, and you've written down how many sold vacant lots in the last 90 days or 6 months in each of those counties, and then you rank them from most popular to the least popular. And then you do a third column for active listings. So how many listings are currently actively, vacant land listings are currently on the market right there. And you're looking for a good ratio. Like if there are 500 sold vacant lots, but 3,000 active listings, that's that ratio. I can't do it in my head, but let's say it's like 0.2. That's not a good ratio, 0.3. But maybe there's a county that has 300 solds, not as many as the other county, 300 solds, but it's only 400 active listings. So then you're at like 0.8, let's say. So the higher that ratio, the better, the higher that ratio of solds to active listings. So anyway, the key to make this work is to find where the fish biting right now. Where are people buying land? Florida is a good market. Texas is a good market. North Carolina, honestly, the red states. A lot of people are fleeing the left and right coasts and coming down to Florida, to North Carolina, to Texas to buy land. Also, Tennessee's a good market. Even in Missouri, you would think, who's moving to Missouri? Well, not too many people. But when I'm looking at Missouri, I'm saying, all right, if somebody's buying land in Missouri, where are they buying it? And you can go find this data on sites like Zillow and Redfin and see, all right, well, these are the top 10 most popular counties where people are buying land right now. I want to fish where the fish are biting. And so then when you find those counties, it's really easy. I use Freedom Soft for this. It's really easy to go and say, all right, in that county, what are the most active zip codes? What part of the lake are they fishing in? The north side or the south side? Or I don't want to just spray and pray in my marketing. So I'm going to find the top zip codes where the most active buyers are buying the most land recently. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull a list of people who own land in those zip codes for over 5 years. They've owned it for over 5 years and they don't live in that area. So their zip code is different than their mailing address zip code is different than the property zip code. And that's it. I'm going to pull a giant list of people who own land for a long time and they don't live anywhere near there. And I'm going to start sending them postcards, cheap, ugly postcards or ugly letters that just say, hey, do you want to sell your land? Sometimes my mail says, hey, it's really important that I talk to you about your 0.6 acre lot in XYZ County. Please call me right now. Call me right away. Here's a 24-hour pre-recorded voicemail. Nobody will answer. So the postcard doesn't even say why I'm sending it to them, but just call, listen to this voicemail. I'll get a really good response rate with that postcard. Sometimes the postcard or the letter says, hey, do you want to sell your lot? I might be interested in buying it. Call me. Then when everybody calls that number, it goes to my voicemail. And then I might call them and talk to them, call them back, talk to them, and ask them some simple questions. Or I might just send them an offer and then talk to them after they get my offer. Now, some other people will send what's called a blind offer. They get a list of all those landowners and just send them a 1,000, 2,000 offers that they got from some calculation or from some spreadsheet, and those aren't very effective. They do work, but I would rather, hey, do you want to sell your land? Call me. I get on the phone, I talk to them, ask them some questions, and then I actually look at that property and see, okay, well, you know what? I might be able to sell it for 100 grand. So I'm going to offer 50 grand. And so my offers are much better because I'm looking at each property I'm sending an offer to. And then it's just a numbers game at that point. It's just a numbers game. For me, it's 1 out of every 20 offers that I send get accepted. And I do a lot of follow-up, and it's just a numbers game. I know if I send 20 offers, I'm going to get one accepted. Maybe it's 1 out of 30. What if it was even just 1 out of 100? It's a numbers game. So I always say this to everybody, your speed to income is directly proportional to the number of offers that you make. And if you want to make a lot of money, you got to make a lot of offers. So every day, if you could talk to 5 people and send each of them an offer, even if you're miles apart, send them an offer anyway in the mail. It's going to, you do that 100 times. If you talk to 5 people a day who own land, that's 25 a week. That's 100 in a month. You should do 1 deal a month.
Couple of questions. Are these what people consider raw land? Kind of like I was describing before.
Yeah.
Okay. And who are the sellers and who are the buyers? Like, are these people that want to own the land that they probably will never change the land from raw? Are these people that want to go off grid? Are they people that, when you buy land, are you buying enough acreage where people can start a farm, or is that not really part of the conversation? I'm just very interested, but also not very knowledgeable.
Yeah, it depends on where the fish are biting. So like in Florida, where a lot of people are buying land, they're buying land, these little 1/4 acre lots in subdivisions. And they bought it 20 years ago and they just don't want it anymore. They were going to build a house on it, but they're like, nah, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of times we find deals from out of probates or out of estates where the husband bought it 10 years ago. Nobody even knew he owned it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going through it now. They're like, we just got to sell this thing.
Yep.
And so we buy land from people that just don't want it anymore. A lot of them, they bought it in the 80s. Maybe they inherited it. Maybe like one guy I bought it from, it's a property that it's underwater like 2 months out of the year because it's in a wetland in Florida. And he bought the land for just recreational purposes. It was about 1.5 acres, and it was enough for then there were no restrictions, so they could put their RV out there
Okay.
when it was dry and go camping, and then drive a half mile to the river and get in the river and do their thing. And I don't know, watch out for alligators, I guess, swim away from the alligators. But that was an area, part of Florida, where a lot of people do that, and they're beautiful spring-fed rivers that are there. Well, anyway, um, I called. He got my postcard, said, "Yeah, I want to sell my property, but my normal offer is 90 days to close. I have 90 days to close." He said, "But I
Okay.
can't wait 90 days. I want to. I'll sell it to you for your price, but I want to close in 30 days." And I said, "Well, okay, tell me why." And he said, "Well, I bought this property 6 years ago, and we just don't use it that much. And my daughter's getting married, and I want some extra money to help pay for her wedding." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Congratulations. I said, my offer was for like $3,000. And I asked him, "How much did you buy the property for 6 years ago?" And he said, "Oh, I bought it for $12,000. And now I felt really bad because I'm offering him 3 grand. He bought it for 12 grand 6 years ago, and he needs the money for his daughter's wedding." So I said, "Oh man, listen, you know what? You should list it with a realtor, to be honest, right? Like, I'll give you the names and numbers of 5 realtors who have sold land recently here. You should call an agent, list it with a realtor, because they'll give you way more money than I would." He's like, "You know what? No, I don't want to do that. I just want to be done with it. I want to get rid of it. I don't care. Can you close in 30 days?" I said, "All right, great." So I bought it for like 3 grand. It might have been all in $4,500 or something after closing costs and everything like that. So I bought it with cash, and then I sold it on owner financing. And I just put it out there in Facebook Marketplace, and I think I sold it for 15 grand. Um, and I'm pretty sure I sold that one on owner financing. And I sold it for, usually I sell them on 5-year notes.
Yep.
I try to get about 5% down, and I charge about 10% interest. So 10% amortized over 5 years. And my cash flow is about $250 on that. But now that I'm selling it on owner financing, I don't have any maintenance or repairs to worry about on that property. Nobody's calling me to fix the toilet, or I'm not, when they stop paying, I don't have to evict them and clean the carpets and repaint the walls and fix everything that they trashed. It's just land. It's just dirt. So the people selling it just don't want it anymore. The people buying it, it could be somebody that wants to build a house there eventually someday. They just want some recreational land to park their four-wheelers, go riding, in the mud, go hunting, go camping, maybe build a house. Or a lot of people have money. They don't want it sitting, they want to diversify. They don't want it sitting in the stock market. They've already got a bunch of gold and crypto. They want to buy some land, and they'll buy the land, and their goal is just to hold on to it for 30 years. God's not making any more of it. And so there's a lot of people. So it depends on the area. If I'm buying land in Western Pennsylvania, let's say, it's going to be more recreational land. If I'm
Okay.
buying land in Southern Florida, it's going to be more infill lots. It's going to be little quarter-acre stamps.
Development, more in
Yeah.
development like
Mhm.
mindset. That's really interesting. So the one thing that surprised me, this is the same model as Stacy and some of the people in her network. People are just buying land on Facebook Marketplace. It seems, I don't know, to the untrained eye, it seems like odd. What can you tell us about how you're marketing to people? What do the economics look like? I'm assuming you're running ads. Can you break that down in a little bit more detail?
Most of our deals we sell with realtors. So
Okay.
we'll buy it. We contact local realtors that are selling land already.
Yep.
And we just say, "Hey, would you list this property for us?" We pay real generous commissions. We want to sell them in 1 or 2 months. So we start with a real aggressive price. If everything else is selling for 100, we're going to sell ours for 90, maybe 85.
Yep.
And then, so my offer is about 40% of that, maybe 50% of that number, because I want to sell them quickly. So I tell realtors I'll pay you 10% commissions. And sometimes I'll pay like 6% commissions and give them a bonus if they can sell it in 30 days. But I tell them I want to sell it aggressively. So we take really good pictures. We take drone photography pictures. We never do anything to the land, by the way. We don't never add utilities. We never clear it out. We never subdivide it or do entitlements. Nothing. So we will, and we know we can sell it fast because we're already chosen the areas in advance where there's already a lot of demand. So we know there's already a market wanting land in this area. So we list it with an agent. We'll also put it on Facebook. I have a student. His name is Zach. we've been working for 4 months now, and he's already done 8 deals, and he's got 4 more under contract. And he's found one of the most competitive markets in Florida, and got a list and sent a bunch of postcards. He's not getting a huge response rate, but he's good on the phone. And everybody he's talking to, he builds a rapport with them, and he sends them an offer. He does a lot of follow up, and he just does these deals. And when he gets them under contract, before he even buys them, he's joined all of the local Facebook groups for real estate, for land, and those buy, sell, trade Facebook groups. So if it's in, let's say, Hernando County, Florida, there's usually one or two Facebook groups for Hernando County that are real estate focused or in real estate investing focused. And there's usually one or two groups for like buy, sell, trade, garage sale type of groups. And he'll join them, and he'll put a post in there. You know how on Facebook you can post just text, and you can choose a color, and it gives you a big block.
Yeah.
So he just does that with red and says, I've got this 1/4 acre lot near the city. I want to sell it for 20 grand. Anybody interested? And that's it. And people will message him and comment. He'll also put it on Facebook Marketplace,
Okay.
but that's it. And he's selling these so quick because, he's not trying to make 10 grand on each deal. He's just trying to make 3 or 5 grand on each deal. So he's not too greedy, and he's selling them at a price that he knows is going to create, a frenzy to try to buy it. He doesn't even list it with realtors.
Interesting. So I guess what's interesting right now is it just, I guess the market research that you're doing suggests that there's enough interest in the space so that you don't get caught holding a piece of raw land that there's no real tradability to. Because obviously that would be a concern to someone that doesn't really know the markets. Like obviously this one person's willing to buy a piece of land for 12,000, then sell it for 3. It's probably because he couldn't find a buyer. But maybe it's just that the people that are owning these lands generally are not paying attention to it. Maybe it's through a probate sale. They didn't take the time to research how to sell it.
They know what the property's worth, right? Like, have you ever seen the show Pawn Stars, right?
Yeah.
People bring in these weird things. They bring in this samurai sword.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, what does the pawn shop do? They come in and they say, hey, so tell me, what's your story? What is this? What's the history behind it? Right.
Yep.
And the guy's like, well, I bought this a long time ago. It was inherited. What do they say? Well, okay, what do you want for it? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking, $5,000. And the guy says, well, let me call my expert here. Let me look at it. And so the expert says, well, it's maybe worth $2,000. So the guy from pawn shop says, you know what? So, what do you want for it? The pawn shop guy always makes them come up with the number first, right?
Yeah.
That guy finally says, well, I'll take 500. No, can't do it. Can you go any lower? No, they go back and forth, right? But kind of like we're that pawn shop owner. That guy who comes to us with that samurai sword, he could sell it on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, he could clean it up. He could take it to maybe not the pawn shops. He could take it to the guys who specialize in martial arts and swords, right? Like, there's probably conventions that he could travel to and get a booth and sell that thing there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's brokers that sell samurai equipment. He could contact Sotheby's, whatever that auction company is.
Yep.
But he's like, no, he needs the money, and he needs it now. He doesn't want to wait. And so that's what we do. We're like pawn shops. They come to us with a property. They just want the cash. And we say, all right, so and when I'm talking to sellers about their property, I care more about their situation than I do about the property. So I ask them, what's your situation? What's going on? This looks like a nice property. Why do you even want to sell it? You should just keep it. You should list it. So what's more important to you? Do you want to sell it fast, or do you want the highest price possible? If they say highest price possible, I say, or they sometimes say both. I say, well, you know what? I'm not your buyer. You should list it with a realtor. You should call. I can send you some agents if you want. I'm always playing the reluctant buyer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They need to convince me why I should want to buy their property. And I'm never pressuring them. It's so easy. It's just like, I don't know if I don't know if I am interested in this property, actually, to be honest. You should list it with a realtor. You know what? you should, if you list it with an agent, you'll get the highest price possible. But if you want the easy button, I'm maybe your easy button, right? Like
Yeah.
I can pay cash, I can close in 30 days, et cetera. And so that's kind of
Interesting.
how I approach it. Now, the earlier question was, what if you get a bad deal? Well, I have 90 days to close in my contract, and I can cancel it for any reason within that 90 days. Now,
I
if it's a
see.
smoking hot deal
Yeah.
and I know it is, and I already have buyers, I'm going to close on it in like 2 weeks with cash. I'll close on it. Or I'll
Yep.
borrow private money
Yep.
to close on it, right? But if it's kind of questionable, I got 90 days to close. And after a month or 2 months, if I'm marketing it and I'm not getting any interest, I'll just go back to the seller and say, this isn't going to work. I'm not getting any interest. And I tell the sellers up front that I'm an investor, right? I'm in the business of making money, profiting from these kinds of deals, and I'm going to turn around and sell it either for cash or for owner financing. And so I don't know if I can find a buyer. Like sometimes I'll tell the seller if it's a marginal deal, listen, I don't know if I can pay 25 grand for it because that's the lowest I can get them down, but I might be able to find somebody else who would. So I need to have at least 90 days.
Yep.
Okay. And I give them a contract and then I put it out there. And if I find somebody, then I'll go ahead and close on it and then sell it, or I'll do a double close, or I will just do an assignment. It kind of depends on the state that you're doing this in. But that's kind of how it goes. So I'm not going to buy a property that I can't sell. I've never lost money on a deal because
Wow.
I'm only going to buy it and close on it if I have somebody else that I can sell it to.
Okay. Pretty cool. And you have it under contract, and obviously 90 days in that space, it's not going to get pushback because they've had it for years. They haven't touched it. They haven't been there in a while. Maybe sometimes they certainly haven't, renovated it. Most of them probably don't have debt on it, for example. So it gives you a little bit more leeway there.
And
That's
there's
pretty
very
cool.
little competition for land deals too. With houses, these homeowners are getting hounded by other
Yeah.
investors, right? They're getting offers left and right. If you don't close on that thing in like 2 weeks or 30 days, you're toast. Someone else is going to contact them, try to go around behind you. Like you got to get it. Like with houses, especially in the hot markets, you need to answer those phone calls live on your cell phone. You need to make an appointment to meet with the seller that day because most of those homeowners are calling a bunch of realtors, they're calling a bunch of we buy houses guys,
Yeah.
and you got to be on it. And then once you get it under contract, you better close on it as soon as possible. With land, it's just so much easier because there's not as much cutthroat competition for those land sellers.
Makes sense. Thanks for breaking that down. Okay. One more question before we wrap up. When you're looking at the space, I know you've done wholesaling, you've done fix and flips. I know you've done a ton. What are you most excited about right now in the marketplace? Obviously, you're doing a lot of land deals. If it's within land, what is it about the potential opportunity? Like, what gets you excited? You know what I'm saying?
What gets me excited is the cash flow from vacant land. To be honest, there's a lot of people out there that are in their 50s and 60s, 70s that do not have any retirement and they're freaked out. They're stressed to the max. How am I going to, Social Security is only going to cover 25% of what I need to live off of, right? How am I going to make enough money? For one reason or another, failed businesses in the past, they didn't save or invest enough money. Maybe they didn't make enough money to invest. And so they're worried. If you could, what we started this whole conversation with was like, you met this lady who's buying land with owner financing and then selling it on owner financing. How much of your money do you need to do that with? None. Maybe a few $1,000 to pay for closing costs, maybe commissions or whatever. But like if you get creative and if you learn how to raise private money like you teach, you can borrow OPM, other people's money, to buy land. It's arbitrage 101. Either maybe the seller, the landowner is the bank, or your private investor is the bank. You get these properties under contract. And if you're averaging a typical deal that we sell on owner financing, let's say you cash flow $250. Let me get my little calculator here, okay? Let's say you needed to make 5,000. You're getting $5,000. You're getting $3,000 a month from Social Security. You're getting $2,000 a month from a pension, and you're $5,000 short to make what you need to make on a monthly income, right? To live your. So you need $5,000, and if you get one of these that make $250 a month, you need 20 deals. Okay. Now, when people think cash flow with houses, they're thinking leverage, debt,
Yep.
mortgages, right?
Yep.
And so to get $250 a month in cash flow, you have to go out and get a $250,000 loan to buy a rental property. And then that cash flow that you think is cash flow, the difference between what you're collecting in rent and what you're paying in mortgage and paying the property manager, you may think you're getting 250 bucks, but that disappears overnight whenever you have a vacancy, you have a hot water
Yeah.
heater
One
that
thing
you have
goes
to
wrong.
replace, right? And then guess what? You've got a bank that doesn't care if the property is vacant or not, right? That bank, they don't care that the water heater is broken and you can't rent it out until you repair the roof. So you get a vacancy, takes 2 or 3 months to kick them out. Then you got to go into the house, put a couple grand in it to clean it up and fix it up. And then you got to put it back on the market and pay the property management company another 1 month's rent to find another tenant for you. And by the time you get it back up again, you've lost 4 months of rent plus a bunch of repairs and property management, extra property management fees, and all of that stuff. So, anyway, here's my point. You're lucky if you can get 10 to 12% cash on cash return on a residential real estate, on a residential house with bank financing. Okay. Now, forget about depreciation because that is a big benefit of residential real estate houses. You get tax write offs. You don't get those same tax write offs with land. But I would argue that land is so much better because your cash on cash return, minimum 50%, 75% in that first year. Okay. Now it's infinite when you use other people's money, but let's say you buy a lot for $5,000, you sell it for $15,000 on owner financing, you're going to be getting $250 a month in cash flow. So if I take 250 times 12, that's $3,000 in cash flow that first year. And you bought it for $5,000, 3,000 divided by 5,000, that's a 60% return on your cash. You can't do that with houses. You can't do that with huge multifamilies and apartments. Now, there's a place for that. I totally agree with that, right? But this is a great asset class that I think people are ignoring that they should be looking at to get better returns on their money. And so now you can sell that lot on 5 or 10-year notes. Now you will have defaults, but that's, guess what? Not a big deal. You just find another buyer. Do you have to go clean anything up? Do you have to go repair anything? No. Do you have a mortgage payment? Probably not. Maybe you have a private investor you're paying every month, but when you borrow private money, you could negotiate with your private investor that says, hey, listen, I will start making payments to you when I get a buyer in the property. And if a buyer stops paying, then I'm just going to move those payments that I'm missing to the end of the loan that I'm paying to the private investor. You can negotiate that with your private investors, right? I don't know, there's probably a fancy term for that. So the point is, you can get these properties for dirt cheap, sell them at a premium with owner financing. And if you get a default, if buyer stops paying, not a big deal. There's a mutual friend that we have. He's been doing land for a long, long time, and I won't say his name, but he owned hundreds and hundreds of lots when the market crashed in '08, maybe thousands. And he was selling them all on owner financing. And I asked him, I said, man, when it was the worst, what was your default rate? And he said about 35%, which is really bad.
Yeah.
35% default rate for land. But guess what? He owned it all free and clear.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it wasn't a big deal. I just found another buyer for it.
Mm-hmm.
He'd already gotten the money back that he put into the lot to
Yeah.
buy it. So that's why I love land so much. I'm excited about the cash flow because you only need 20 of these properties to make about $5,000 a month. And if you did one deal a month in less than 2 years, you could be making $5,000 a month in passive cash flow from these lots. It's just it's mind blowing why more people don't do this.
Love that. And no tenants, no toilets, no trash. You actually don't even own the property. There is no property, but you don't even own the land. You're essentially just seller financing it. So you're
It
selling
depends
it.
on how. Yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
if
Fair
I'm
enough.
buying it
Fair
with
enough.
seller financing, though,
Right.
I do take title to the property.
Right.
I use a
Right.
title
But then you're
company. I
selling
close
it
on it,
though.
but I'm selling it on a land contract.
Yeah. Makes
I'm not
sense.
even deeding it over to that new buyer.
Oh,
They
okay.
get the deed after they finish making the payments. But
I see. I see. That's right. Okay. Well, listen, I have learned a lot. It's been super helpful for people that are interested. They want to learn more. Maybe they want to invest. Maybe they want to do this themselves. How can they learn more about you and your company?
well, I just got this new book. and it's got not for resale banner on it because it's not the it's almost on Amazon, but it'll be
Okay,
out there soon. It's
let's
called
go.
Flip Dirt Not Houses: How to Create Monthly Cash Flow by Flipping Vacant Land in 5 Easy Steps. So one of the best ways is just go to my YouTube channel, just search for Joe McCall. I don't have a website yet for this book, but also that's probably the best. Just go to my YouTube channel.
Cool.
Yeah,
We will
and
link
just
to
search.
that in the show
I
notes
have a lot of
page.
videos there.
Totally. I'm trying to crank on my YouTube as well, so I'll see you at the top, my friends.
Yeah,
Joe,
Hunter.
really appreciate it, man. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, take care.